Hello everybody, welcome to episode 25 of Setting the Scene. I'm your host David. Now unfortunately the channel is out of battle reports. Boris and I tried to film as much content as we could before second lockdown. That has now been exhausted, and we're on to Setting the Scene, back to school and firefight. So I've got a lot planned and I'm going to try and get as many of these shows out as possible to try and tie you over until we can resume filming battle reports. Hopefully the tiers will be a bit more favourable to us in January and we can get back on it, because I've unfortunately had to cancel so many guests to come on the channel. It's been horrible really, but hopefully we can get back to it in the new year and then schedule will resume as normal. What it has done though, it has allowed me time to paint stuff and get stuff ready. So there is a bit of a backlog in my little hobby room that is ready to go. So I'm really excited about that. Had a load of models back from various painters in the UK and France. So hopefully that'll be really cool when it comes out. Anyway, what we're doing in this one. In this one, as we are in December now, 8th of December we are today, I'm going to do Winter Wonderlands for the rest of the month. And then in January we'll look at doing something different. So there's quite a bit to cover actually. I was thinking about it over the last couple of weeks about what we're going to do, and there's just so many aspects to do, and I could drag it out over 4 videos, but I thought that's a bit unfair. So I'm going to try and cover it as much as I can in this first one. And remember, all of these views are my own. It's just the way that the channel has developed building boards over the last sort of 2-3 years really. So there's no right way or wrong way to build a battlefield, but this is just my way, and hopefully it'll inspire you to build some of your own setting the scenes, or start to build your own sort of live battlefields. And I thoroughly believe that they will enhance your game. Now, let's get started with this one. We're going to build a very small Winter Wonderland that essentially pits 2 forces against each other, which will lead really nicely into the firefight, which I'm going to film after this video. So it's kind of more of a snapshot that kind of sets that scene, hence the title. So what we've got is the lovely Zone Mortalis Iron Hands force versus some Mechanicum. Now I've got some Adeptus Titanicus scale models here, and I will be doing Adeptus Titanicus setting the scenes, but not just yet. These are purely here to kind of show you a point really. So let's start with the rock formations in front of me. These are aquarium rock formations. I get them from a place in Peterborough called the Water Zoo. It's a really, really great shop. My parents used to buy me goldfish there when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So I'm 40 now, so it's been going a long time, which is good. Anyway, they've got some really great scenery in there, as I'm sure lots of other aquarium shops up and down the country or around the world have. These ones are really great because they look quite cool. They did have massive holes in them for fish to swim out, but if I can show you on this one, I filled them with I don't know what it's called, expanding foam, that's it. Let it set overnight and then cut it off, and then I just filled it with plaster and then used a wire brush just to shape it, and a sculpting tool from Games Workshop, and a screwdriver and anything else I could find to hand, just to kind of create those lines. And you can see here on this camera right in front of me that used to be a hole there, so I've kind of just sculpted it on and the front. I mean, sculpting is not my skill set, but I think once you do it and rough it up a little bit, you won't really know the difference. They would then just spray black and then 2 different colours. So Halford's grey over the black, just Zenithal highlight, and then a lighter grey over the top. Done, super easy. Now, why have I got these out in front of me? Well, one main reason is to show scale. So there is a little bit of thinking that goes into the channel. I don't just chuck stuff on the board and hope for the best. So obviously got 2 different scales here. Now, Adeptus Titanicus is played over a huge, vast battlefield. It's all scaled. We all know the buildings. They're quite small, and it looks good. So my only criticism of the game is there is not enough line of sight blocking terrain in the game. And if there is, the Games Workshop kits are absolutely amazing. The buildings you can buy over the roof bits, bobs and everything else, and the little flying buttresses and stuff, they are fantastic. But they do cost a lot of money. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a bottomless pit of money to buy terrain with. So that's why I've turned to these aquarium pieces. And the main reason why I use these pieces, because they scale really well, because you want line of sight and you want them to be large, big and imposing. and that's why I use aquarium stuff for Adeptus Titanicus, because it scales well. Now, if you look at these Iron Hands here, obviously 30k scale models, these don't quite work for me. I've seen quite a few Battlefields where they get mixed in a lot with the Games Workshop, you know, the big building stuff, and then this stuff, and it just doesn't work for me for 30k. So why have I got these out? I just wanted to show you that point. Some stuff might work and might scale really well, but in my opinion, this just doesn't work. So I'm not going to be using these ones. The ones I'm using are down by my feet. So I'll go them in a second and show you what I mean. Here we are, rocks from the garden centre. And now I know you're probably bored of me saying, oh, rocks from the garden centre is really good, but they really, really are. And for me, they scale much better with 30k than they do with the Adeptus Titanicus. That's just my personal opinion. You might think otherwise, and that's absolutely fine. It's your Battlefield. You do whatever you like with it. You know, there's no criticism from me. But just for the channel, I just think they work really, really well. And also, they're dirt cheap. And I do film more 30k games than I do Adeptus Titanicus. That's because we are the 30k channel, and the priority has to go into 30k. And for me, they just scale a lot better. Now, I have used rocks in the past on Adeptus Titanicus boards, and that's absolutely fine. It works to a point, but for me, 30k works much better with the rocks rather than the aquarium stuff. So this is the little scene I'm setting up here. Again, it's just going to be two forces meeting in the middle, and then we're going to do a firefight after that. We're going to address some issues about combat and having combat over an extended line, and also we're going to look at challenges as well, which, to be fair, can be quite confusing. So we're going to try and navigate our way through that if we can. So we've kind of set up a bit of a backdrop. Hopefully you can see that on the camera in the corner of the screen there. Looks quite good. But we're not going to stop there. As I mentioned, we are going to film a winter wonderland. And for that, I've got salt. Here we go. This is my snow. You can use sugar, and I've used sugar in the past. However, I was a bit worried that if I'd left it overnight, my booth would be invaded by an army of ants. So salt is the better option, but also salt is a lot finer, almost like sand, and is a lot better, and does scale a little bit better than sugar as well. But I guess the only problem is when you start sprinkling it around, it creates kind of a salty mist, and you get it on your lips, and you can just taste salt all day, which is not too bad. It's reminiscent of buying fries from McDonald's, but anyway. So that's our salt. We're going to come back to that in a second. But if I just put some salt down on this black floor here, and then put some models on top, it will just look really flat and really uninteresting. So we need to create some texture, but also as well, we need to kind of blend some of these edges in. Around the rocks, and we need to create a bit of drama in the foreground as well. I'm going to do that with a crater from Unreal Wargaming Studios. It's one of their resin craters, and then maybe one of my favourite pieces of terrain, maybe a container, but we'll see about that. But the main ingredient for this is just the slate, which you've seen me use all the time. Yes, it does make a mess. We've talked about this loads of times, but I think the result is worth it and creates such a lovely texture. And I know I'm only building it over such a small area here, so it's only sort of about 12 inches, well, it's probably about 18 inches maybe, and maybe a foot deep. But it'll just give you an idea. And this can easily be replicated over a whole 6x4, 4x4, whatever. And it will dramatically change the profile of the battlefield, or the undulation of it, and also the aesthetic of it. So it does work really well. So I'm just going to go for a classic face-off, two forces in the middle, ready to charge into a combat or shoot and overwatch and charge, whatever. So super, super easy build. We're going to stick that in the middle. We're going to blend, well, we're not really going to blend it actually, because we're going to put a ton more down. So all we're going to do is we're just going to dump a load of this all over, and I've got a ton more by my feet, and I'll just quickly grab that. All right, I've got a whole bucket full of it, so I'm just going to dump a load of it onto the scene. We're not going to be too precious about where it goes. I promise you, the more the better. Okay. Now, it's a bit weird because obviously we don't have any boundaries defining the battlefield. So we just have to kind of be a bit abstract. And then I've got a camera right in front of me. So I'm just going to try and blend it out as much as possible so that it will fill the entire area in front of the camera with slate. And then when I go back in to edit it, I'll kind of zoom in a little bit more, and it won't look so, it won't have so many dark patches. It won't look so weird. So hopefully, if you're watching this video, that worked out really well, but who knows. I'm going to need a little bit more. I do have loads. I brought 2 bags of slate chip from my garden centre, and then I have a metal sieve which is used for earth in gardens, and it only let in the smaller pieces, which is the pieces I'm using now, which is what we want. And then I have to wash it 3 or 4 times with the garden hose and rinse it out. And then the morning I did this, I needed it for about a report or setting the scene in the afternoon. So I put it all onto baking trays and then put it in the oven. And then that just perfectly dries it out. It's bone dry. Because if not, you have to leave it outside. And if it's winter or it's wet, it takes ages to dry. If you stick it in the garage, it's dark, it doesn't dry. So it's best just to stick it in the oven. And it's perfect. It's so dry. So what we want to do with these rocks, we want to try and make a little bit of realism here, because when we put the salt over the battlefield, it will catch on some of these areas and it will really help to blend in this area here. But also as well, I want it stacked up against the rocks. You know, if you've been walking in the Peak District, or if your country has some, you know, some reasonable rock formations, which is no reason why it wouldn't, you know, the larger rocks stand proud above the landscape, and then, you know, rain and humans and all sorts, weather effects, they crack bits off and then the stuff falls down, and then it, you know, creates a bit of a rocky base. And that's all we're trying to achieve here. I'm going to try and dump some in there. But what it does as well, it kind of gives us a really nice scoop, so it's not just flat and then rock coming up. It helps blend that in a little bit. Now I am using quite a lot, but if we scale this up over a whole 6x4, that rock was £3.50, that was £3.50, and that was £3.50, and then this bag of slate it had much larger pieces in, so you'd probably need 4 bags of slate, and I think they cost about, I think it's about £10 a bag, so 40, you know, so you're probably looking at 80 quid, and this is reusable a million times over. You know, it's completely reusable. You'll never have the same battlefield twice. So from that aspect, it's really good. You really get bang for your buck. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to build up some undulation. And the reason why we're doing this, because obviously I would have used aggregate normally, so the aquarium stuff, but the last thing you want to do is mix up salt with your aggregate, because you can't manually separate it, so then you have to submit the whole thing in water, let the salt dissolve in the water, and then you then have to rinse the aggregate out, which is slightly bigger than sand particles, which just takes forever, and then you've got to dry it, so it's just not worth doing. So whenever I do a winter board, I never use aggregate. I always just use the slate, because it's so much easier to separate out from the salt or the snow, whatever you want to call it. But all we're doing, we're just trying to get some undulation into the ground, which I think we've got there quite nicely. Just kind of feather this out for the camera in front of me. That looks really good. Now, you know, if you didn't want to play on a snowboard, you could just easily pop your stuff down and you've already got a battlefield ready to go. And it does look really good, because you've got the real muted colour of the slate and the rock against the kind of really beautiful bright red, vibrant colours of the, you know, word bearers, Mechanicum, whatever, Blood Angels, against the blue of the ultramarines or whatever. So, you know, already that looks pretty good. But as I said, we are going to have a bit of a winter wonderland, so we're going to introduce some salt. The only thing I need to find is my colander, so I'll be back in a second. Now, I did say colander, but I actually meant sieve, so I do apologise. Right, let's get into this. So we've just got some salt, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to liberally, just for the time being, you can see the very, very fine dust particles from the salt, the salt particles rather. They'll create a bit of a mist. And the reason why I'm putting it through a sieve is because I just don't want it to dump snow all over the place. But you can do that, and you can create snowdrifts, and we will do that in a second. But for the foreground, I just want it to be like it's just starting to snow, nothing too crazy. Because the other problem you have when we use salt is that it reflects light. So sometimes the battlefields can be a bit overexposed. So we then have to go back into the program, into Final Cut, and then we just have to dull that down a little bit, which is a bit unfortunate. So I've got a little bit on the rocks here. Now I am just going to put a few drifts here. Yeah, see, look, it goes way too much. I know it's a lot of effort, but even if you're not using it for your main battlefield, you know, which I totally get, it's a lot of effort just to play a 3K game on. And if you've not got the space, it's a pain. But you could just build yourself a little 2x2 box, like I've done, put a Realm of Battle section in there, and then just do your setting so you can take a photo. And that's just a really, you know, that's, if you're fed up for painting, you've got too much painting, you can't be bothered to hobby or whatever, it's just a nice exercise that we don't do enough. You know, a lot of us take photos of our armies on the inside cover of the red books, the black books, and it looks great. You know, we've got that new map now that Forge World released that looks really, or Black Library I think it was released, it looks really good, but this just takes it to the next level, doesn't it? I want a little bit of salt on that crater. I think that's it, you know. Oh, hang on. Maybe a little bit on there. I don't want to go crazy with it because you just end up like a big dumping of snow. And what we want is we want that really lovely texture. Using salt, definitely less is more, 100%. What I will do though is I will put a little bit more on top of these sections here. Yeah. I've got the Hoover on standby, so it's an absolute nightmare to clean up. But I think it's worth it. Right, I think that's done. Now a quick look at the camera. Yeah, that looks quite good. We've got a bit of snow on the peaks here, and then the salt has just worked into all those little areas on here between all the gaps in the rock. And if you don't like it, like I've just done there, you can just massage the rocks a little bit, and that'll knock off the salt or the snow, and then you can just reapply because it all just kind of filters down really. I really like that, it looks great. Now what we are going to do, and the beauty of salt is, and you might want to do this with your models, which I totally get, but at the channel we like to go a bit realistic because obviously the Iron Hands are on Zone Mortalis bases, which obviously doesn't work. I just think really does make a stronger case for having clear bases, but we know how you guys feel about clear bases. However, I'm not going to lie, I am seriously entertaining clear bases, but for another project, so not just yet, but anyway, don't want to give too much away. Okay, so we've got a melter gun here, that'll be good for taking out the vehicle. We'll get Ortec more in here. And also as well, because there is a bit of a fine mist from the salt, it does, almost like weathering powder, just put a really fine kind of dusting of white powder on top of the legs and the greaves and stuff like that, and the boots. So, you know, you might not want to do it to your models. You probably spent ages painting your models and stuff, and you don't want to put sand all over them, which I totally get. I get that. But the channel, I'm not too worried about it, you know. But the other thing which you can do, of course, is you just, I just rinse stuff under the tap, or get like a little spray bottle and then just do that. But, you know, I'm not too worried. If you've got weathering powder on there, it's not a good idea, or you can just use your airbrush just to, but it won't ruin your model. A bit of water will not ruin it, I promise. I think we'll have the Contempt at the back here. Let's just get a bit on his base. Yeah, that's better. So hopefully you can see that it's started to blend in with the scene a little bit more, and we'll do exactly the same with the Mechanicum. The Mechanicum base is a bit more textured, so it does look a little bit better because some of that texture comes through, which is pretty cool. Now I have to bear in mind this is set up for camera, so I need to kind of make it look like it's going off. I think I'll do the vehicle first. We'll put a little bit on the tracks. I'll probably do that with my fingers actually. Oh yeah, that is the Badger. You know, those tracks just trap all of that salt in there, which works brilliantly. I'll get loads of photos, so don't worry about this. You know, I appreciate that you probably you don't have the same view that I've got, but it works really well. Whilst I'm doing this, just a few things to talk about. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed to the website. I really appreciate it. It allows me to keep going and produce content for you, which I absolutely love, as you know. The stickers were unbelievably successful. I posted tons to virtually everywhere in the world. America was a big... and Canada as well. Surprisingly, there was a ton of people in Canada that wanted stickers. So posted a load out there. England, of course, was very big. You know, that's where a lot of Heresy players are based, in the UK. But America and the US are the next biggest. Sorry, that's the same. Canada and the US. Sorry, apologies. A few to Australia, which was great, and there was a few in Europe, which was really, really cool. So yeah, so if you do want a free sticker, I have gold, silver, red, black, and white. All you need to do is email me, david@the30kchannel.com, and I will send a sticker free of charge anywhere in the world. So please do that if you require some stickers. And, you know, if you get a sticker, you know, pop it up on Instagram, tag me in, and I'd love to see where you've stuck it. We're nearly there. Just readjust that arm. I've put a bit more on the vehicle there, and I might try and capture a bit on the Contemptor, because, you know, it does snow, and snow gets onto everything. Oh yeah, it's actually caught right behind the back of the necks on the models there. Yeah, I think that looks really good. That looks really good. Now, do we need to add some accessories? I'm keen for a crate, but for me, a crate, oh, it might work. Let's have a look at the camera. I've got to, I'm so sorry. I've got to get a crate into the shot. I'll just pop a little bit of stuff on there. You could argue that maybe the Iron Hands have been waiting for this crate for some munitions or whatever, and the Mechanica race to try and wrestle it from them. We'll get the Reaver out the way. I do have some barrels, not covered in salt. I've got some barrels and some ammo boxes here. I do like a barrel. Let's pop a barrel there and there, just to further reinforce the... We'll put a bit of snow on there as well. And as I said, I'll get a ton of photos. I'll have a bit of a clear down, and I'll get a ton of photos, and I'll add those photos to the end of this video so you can see what I've gone and done. Right. I think that is that. Let me get rid of that sieve. Let's have a quick look. Camera in front of me. I mean, it does look pretty cool. And if you can imagine, when I pull my backdrop up, I've just got a black backdrop behind it. I take some photos. It will look really good. And we'll try and zoom in and give you some nice shots and stuff. But I think it works. Anything else to add? No, I don't think so. You could go crazy and put some stuff in the foreground or whatever, but I think, you know, as a scene, two forces meeting in the battlefield and ready to shoot and charge and defend with their shields, I think it looks pretty good. Right, that is it. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of Setting the Scene. I've really, really enjoyed doing it, and I would love to see you build your own scene. Get a bit of wood, put some sides on it, or just a flat surface, and you can just brush it off the kitchen table, or if you've got a little bit of space in the garage, just a bit of wood, paint it black, or use a Realm of Battle tile, and then just put a backdrop up. Just think about the photo. If you're going to take a photo, you don't want your tools in the background. I don't want your family of your kids in the background, or your TV, or your DVD collection, if that's a thing anymore. I don't think people collect DVDs anymore, or your computer or whatever. So just try and set that really lovely scene. Get a backdrop. Even a curtain, a plain coloured curtain would be really good. Or if you've got some Photoshop skills, you can put a green screen up and then add some kind of atmospheric sky and clouds, and just like the Forge World books do, they are absolutely superb. And then put a sepia filter over it, which is what I do, of course, but I'd love to see it. Again, I'm waffling, I'm so sorry. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please email me, david@30kchannel.com for stickers if you require them. And obviously Instagram's @30kchannel. Thank you so much for watching.
It is not my intention to be a president, but it is the people who appointed me to be the president.
حتى تتطهر البلد من الدنس والنجاس، لا يمكن نسمح لليبيا تضيع بين ايدينا بدون مبرر في خطى الباطل.
Alcuni fraudolenti, alcuni trattati di pace.
Sono degli siamo, non ti ci da storia.